We are live on YouTube at the same time,
and of course, we
which
love
is fantastic.
people asking questions and
We are dual streaming this sucker, and
And we'll try to be paying attention as we go. Just if we don't get a comment or question, please don't freak out and start, why are you answering my question? Why are you avoiding the topic? It's like we're doing several
we're doing a
things at
reaction
once
video,
here. So we'll try to keep up, but if we miss it, just please repost it.
Yeah.
You don't need to spam, but if it's
Thanks for
been
the
a minute and we haven't acknowledged it, we probably just missed it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm ready to go. I'm glad you think
The
he's
left-wing
great.
gender insanity being pushed on our children
Being
is
pushed
an act of
on our children.
pushed on our children.
So I like how he's already setting this up as it's this crazy fringe idea that's being forced upon kids. And it's
Right.
like, telling children about something is not pushing it on them.
Talk about
Letting
loaded
children
language.
know that people in wheelchairs exist and are valid doesn't mean you want to break their kneecaps and put them in a wheelchair. It just means you're letting them know that's a possibility. And sure, maybe one day it might happen to them.
Maybe.
Who knows?
It happened to me. And I'll tell you, one of my key complaints about my transition from the get-go, my upbringing from the get-go, is that I didn't know that it was an option.
Yeah, lots of people didn't know. And I think there's this whole
I wish I
idea
had.
of pushing it on kids. They're forcing it on kids. And I don't think a lot of these people even really understand what is being told to children and at what age.
No.
In
No
most
one's pushing anything.
cases, it's maybe mentioned in like middle school as an option during a sex ed class. Maybe.
Yeah.
And of course, kids are smart and they do have access to the media. Most of them are going to find out that way from talking to other kids. And kids that do have these feelings are allowed to explore them or are encouraged to explore them without guilt and shame, as opposed to just hiding from the feelings and then
Ethel, you're a mod.
coming out 40 years
By the way.
later.
So, what's being forced on children is religious indoctrination. Is being forced on children.
Yeah, I will say I was raised in an extremely religious household, and that was forced on me. I didn't have a choice. And frankly, kids don't have a choice of their parents and what their parents are going to expose them to. That's why I think it's great to have a world where you can be exposed to those other ideas. I am absolutely fine with my child being exposed to other religions, even though I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
It gives them a chance to think and explore and ask good questions. There's a difference between presenting it and forcing it on kids. I've got a kid. We've got a child in school. Like, we've literally seen the curriculums in several different states. Even in very liberal ones, it's not being pushed at all.
Zal asks, what productivity does being trans bring? I don't know about productivity, but being your own authentic self, being who you are, it makes me happy.
Well,
it makes trans
I'll say
people
what
happy.
productivity it makes. This lady, just because I've got her as a great example, she's not horribly depressed anymore. She's happy. She's energetic. She's motivated. She gets things done. She's calmer. She's kinder. She's a better parent. So I'll tell you that. And as far as religion led me to hide the fact that I was being raped, if you will, for years, and made me think it was my fault. And even to this day, after being out of religion for more of my life than was in it, I still have religious trauma and terror. I was medically abused as a child because I was told that if I prayed and did a good enough job, that should be what would cure me from medical conditions. And it didn't. And it's left me with lifelong problems. And I'm not saying all families take it to that extreme, and I'll even agree most don't, but there, two examples right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've gone off on a rant and we're already only 7 seconds in. Go away, Midsummer's Dream. Goodbye. Let's see. Yeah, get Midsummer's Dream out of here for me, please.
Child abuse, very simple.
And child
Here's my plan to...
Like, again, he's already painted it as nothing productive at all. And certainly it gets a certain percentage of the population going. But I would dare say that most people haven't actually studied this issue much, if any.
Yeah, it's not child abuse. What's child abuse is forcing a trans kid to go through the wrong puberty. That is CA right there.
Yes.
Ask me how I know.
Stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth.
Mutilation.
On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies.
Joe
on
Biden
so-called
hasn't had any
gender-affirming
policies
care.
on this. If anything, he's not been pro-trans enough. Right now, by law, these things are regulated medically by medical boards and doctors, which is where they need to be and need to stay.
Yeah, already in the transcript, we've got like 4 or 5 examples of him poisoning the well and just calling it child abuse, calling it cruel, calling it mutilation. Like, he is setting it up as a straw man, and completely ignoring the medical consensus of every major medical body, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the World Health Organization, WPATH, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, pretty much every major medical association agrees with transgender health care as it is currently being carried out. And as far as Project 2025 goes, I think it's a terrible idea, and I think it's bad for everyone who doesn't think and behave and want a world exactly like the one that they do. They're going to try to suppress anyone that's different from them and make it impossible to have freedom. Their idea of freedom is the freedom to subjugate everyone else under their will, and that's not cool or okay.
Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance.
I know he said he isn't part of Project 2025, but he's very frequently siding with them, and a lot of people from his administrations and his team are on the board of Project 2025. So it's kind of like saying he wasn't doing the quid pro quo thing with Ukraine when he was impeached, because he never said the words quid pro quo. That would be like, okay, maybe I'm not in the mafia, but all of my family and friends are in the mafia. Like, sure, okay, I'm not in the mafia, but I've got some real close associations there. And I suspect that that distance was only put there so he could say, I had nothing to do with it, for those people that were a little squizzed out by Project 2025, without offending those people that were for it.
Right.
On minor children. Can you believe this?
No, I can't believe this. There isn't surgery being done on minor children, gender-affirming surgery to any large degree.
Yeah, and minor children, if there is surgery, we're talking about 16 and 17-year-olds. And this is only happening with consent of the parents. Throughout this, you'll notice he's phrasing a lot of this to make it seem as though all of these things are happening to children against their parents' wishes. And the way things are set up right now in America, unless things are bad enough that a medical organization can obtain medical custody of a child only receives treatments in a way that their parents have agreed to and approve with. So here he's going to talk a lot about parental freedoms, but keep in mind that there are currently lots of parents that do in fact support their children getting this health care and agree that it is necessary for their children, the children that they know better than we do, that their doctors understand more than we do. So this is not being done to children against parents' will, though we could discuss that maybe, this would be one of those cases where there's enough science there, it should be done for children if medical experts agree it's best. But that's a different issue in hazy. So just again, keep in mind, nothing is happening to children against their parents' wishes, for better or worse.
I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age.
So, the concept of sex and gender transition is not being promoted.
And again, at
From what I
any age.
understand.
So they try to make it, oh, he's just protecting children. No, he's literally trying to also make it impossible for adults to transition as well. It would be like, imagine if you came in and said, I'm going to remove and revoke any mention of diabetes. Because you're teaching children about diabetes, you're going to just make them eat junk food to get diabetes. And any federal agency that promotes health and not, and doing things to discourage the development of diabetes, we're cutting all that funding the first day I'm in office. He sounds about that ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states.
Child sexual mutilation.
Right. And again, characterizing gender-affirming care as child sexual mutilation is absolutely poisoning the well, and that's not at all what's happening.
Male circumcision aside, child sexual mutilation is illegal in all 50 states currently.
Yeah.
And again, surgery is not being done to these children. Puberty blockers are completely reversible. And it's not like these kids just wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm trans, and then go get on hormones and get a surgery. No doctor is going to prescribe to them unless they have been living as their chosen gender for some period of time. This isn't something that's rushed into. Also, children are aware of their gender identity in most cases before the age of 7. So for people, they're like, well, they're kids. How do they know? It's like, well, sometimes, maybe a kid's like, no, I don't like broccoli, and then they grow up and like broccoli. But then there are other things. It's like, well, oh, Johnny is really musical. And at 5, he's really musical. Well, he's probably still going to be pretty musical at 30, too. There's some things that, okay, yeah, it's a changing fad, and then there's some things that are just kind of part and parcel of who and what you are. And we've established that gender is, in fact, one of those things. Gender being different than sex.
Right. I've known that I'm a girl since the age of 3. It's something that I've known about myself for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And Cadence, we actually have been contemplating leaving the country. But at the same time, that doesn't solve the issue. Because not everyone is able to leave the country. That's a lot to ask. And furthermore, we believe in human rights. I'm against, human rights abuses in countries that I don't live in. So even if I didn't live here, I'd still feel the same way and think it was just as important to come out against this. Nice try, though.
Yeah. And so again, if you're just joining us, my name is 7, like the number 7. My pronouns are she, her. And you can be respectful or you can go away.
Well, and Sandy said, you know what? For kids that do feel like they've regretted it, I would definitely like to see more study done on those kids. The studies that we have so far indicate that there's not a lot in the way of a regret rate for transitioning.
Right.
And
the regret rate is less than 1%.
Unfortunately, I hear a lot of talk about kids that say they wish someone had stopped them, but I don't hear a lot of kids actually talking about it. And just because a few people regret something doesn't mean it's bad. I know people who regret having children. Does that mean we sterilize all infants at the moment of birth?
I'd say the regret rate of having children is a lot higher than the regret rate of transitioning. Because again, we have data on this. The regret rate of transitioning is about 1%. It's one of the lowest regret rates for anything
and
that exists. The regret rate for hip replacement surgery is 25%, and yet hip replacement surgeries continue.
Yeah, I was going to say, and a lot of people that regret it don't regret it because they think they were wrong or wish they hadn't changed genders. It's because of the way society and their family and the people around them react. So there definitely are people that regret it, and I do think we need to study and pay attention to that, because if we could get that regret rate even lower, then all the better. But unfortunately, there are going to be regrets in life. Like, I know children who got a very extreme haircut and regretted it right away. Or, 10, 15 years later, God, I wish my mom hadn't let me do that. Or, man, I wish I hadn't given up piano. Like, unfortunately, those things are going to exist. But at the same time, that's where we've got to trust the medical system and parents to know and understand their children better. Puberty blockers are kind of, I think, a nice in-between option there, where you can delay the unwanted puberty, or the potentially unwanted puberty, while giving the kids some time to grow into their decision more, and just make absolutely sure. But taking puberty blockers off the table as well, I don't know. It seems extra fucked up to me. Because it seems like if they really wanted to protect kids, in puberty blockers, just put them on blockers until they're 16.
Yeah.
17.
Like, if the argument is you can't know what your gender is, you've got a young boy, a young child who's assigned male at birth, and you think he's a boy because he has a joystick, but how does he know for sure that he's a boy? How does he know for sure that he wants to go through male puberty? We should give all the kids puberty blockers by that logic, and nobody is actually suggesting that we do that. But following your logic to its logical conclusion, that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, we should put all kids on puberty blockers, make them mandatory.
Yeah.
Because what if those cis kids made a mistake? I mean, you thought you were a boy for a long time. You were wrong. You regret that, don't you?
Absolutely.
You regret that your parents didn't step in and help you as a child, don't you?
Yeah. One of my biggest regrets, like I said, I've known that I'm a girl since I was about 3, and I was telling my parents that from a very, very young age. But of course, this was back in the 80s. They hadn't heard about being trans. They didn't understand anything about being transgender. And so they were just like, no, you're a boy. And I tried to go with that. I tried to live my life as a boy and then as a man, and was horribly, horribly depressed throughout my entire life.
Lexi, she knows she was made perfectly. That's why she's gone and is living the way she was made as a woman.
What made me think that at 3?
It's
just something I know about myself. I certainly didn't have any indoctrination. I certainly didn't have anyone telling me I was a girl.
Yeah, she had no idea what trans people were at that time.
None whatsoever. All I knew was that I was a girl.
But fact of the matter is, most children know their gender identity before the age of 7.
Yeah.
So if you find you have honest retellings, many trans people, even those that came out later in life, like 7 did, will have these stories of times they did things that were definitively blinking in the direction of them being trans at a very young age.
Yeah. And people are going to accuse me of lying, but
and no,
I'm
she
telling the
didn't
truth.
idolize her mother.
No, absolutely not. The opposite, in fact. No, I idolized my father.
And she wasn't allowed to dress
far
like
more
a
than my
girl
mother
as a child.
Yeah,
either.
I wasn't. Aside from cross-dressing competitions, I participated in a few cross-dressing competitions, and let me tell you, putting on a dress just felt so freeing, so liberating. So it felt like me. It always has. And there were a lot of other signs from a very young age that I was trans, if you know what to look for. But of course, my parents didn't know what to look for, which is not really their fault. But we're advocating for more education so that people do know what to look for. And there are guide rails in place to prevent children from transitioning who aren't really trans. And the
people,
guide rails are really, really good.
Yeah, and at this point, if anything, you could argue that maybe they're already getting to be too strict. And that's at this point now, before all of this stuff goes into effect.
Yeah.
But, and if a doctor is not following those guide rails, we also have what's called malpractice. And a doctor that's not properly practicing medicine, whether that's transgender, healthcare, or anything else, abso-fucking-lutely needs to be punished to the fullest extent of the law.
Yep.
But again, we've already got that system in place. We don't need something new. And no one's mutilating anybody. But then again, you know, you talk about somebody like, actor, God, I forget his name. He was, of course, the only movie I can remember the name of that he was in is Juno.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. He was fully adult when he came out as trans.
Yeah.
And they talked about him mutilating his breasts.
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either, though. The trans
surgery.
man?
Yes.
All right, Natasha, you got it.
You absolutely can find this video. It is absolutely not a fake AI.
What the hell?
That's
talking about it's
one.
fake.
But yeah,
That's
no, this
crazy.
should be very easy to find. I
This is
believe
extremely
he
easy
came
to
out
find.
with this about 6 months or so ago.
No, a year, more like a year and 6
Okay,
months.
I
June of
apologize.
2023.
Really? It's been that long already.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah. So it's about June of 2023 as the presidential election was coming up. And he released this on Truth Central. And it was also covered by several major media outlets. This is a completely uncut copy of this video. If you can't find it, you're just not looking well, because it is not hard to find.
All right, let's carry on.
Very quickly, I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare, and will be terminated from the program immediately.
So, again, they're characterizing gender-affirming care as mutilation. And that's kind of how they justify it, isn't it?
And again, they're not taking into account that all of these procedures that are happening with the full consent and buy-in of parents. There are plenty of excellent parents that believe this is the best path forward for their children. Many of these parents didn't even believe in transgender rights or understand trans people until they realized their kid was trans, and then they started doing their research and came around. So these are not all of these children belong to like heavily left-wing people. Hell, I'm married to a trans woman, and I absolutely did not wish that upon my child.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's a hard road. It really is. Nobody is trying to force kids to be trans if they're not already trans.
Yeah, and in our case, we're not even forcing the issue with our child who has come to us and said, hey, guess what? Trans.
Yeah.
They know what the options are. Occasionally we have little talks about it, but we're not running out to put them on puberty blockers or hormone treatments.
No.
They know it's an option, and if they ask about it, then we will pursue it, and with the guidance of a trained medical professional, decide what's best for them. But we're like some of the most liberal parents you can think of that would be totally cool with it. And that wasn't even something that we've done or would do.
No, absolutely not. And revoking doctors from Medicaid and Medicare
that could fuck the whole system.
Okay.
Sorry.
Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children.
And again, there's already ways to sue doctors that have acted outside the bounds of what is medically correct and all of that. I don't know that there needs to be a separate action fund for that. It's just making it seem like there's this massive pool of people that have been harmed. And it doesn't seem to be the case.
Right.
Nothing is indicating that that's the case.
It's a tiny number of people, and to say that they've been harmed is, I mean, I'm not going to say that they've been harmed, because the doctors involved were doing the best they could, following the guidelines they could.
As happens with any surgery, sometimes someone's going to be given a medication that should work or seems correct for the treatment, for the condition they're presenting with, and then they'll find out that that does harm, or it hurts them, or it just didn't work well.
Or, you'll go in for that hip replacement surgery and you will become unalive on the operating table, and that's nobody's fault. Sometimes things just happen.
Also, I did look for this video, and it's extremely easy to find.
Oh yeah, it's very easy to find. The video is called...
saying it's AI.
The video is called President Trump's Plan to Protect Children from, quote, Left-Wing Gender Insanity, unquote. Yeah, no, it's very easy to find. It's on YouTube. It's on DonaldTrump.com. Like, it's super easy to find, guys.
Yeah,
we didn't make this up. We did not make this up. Like, I don't know why we would make this shit up. But...
Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions.
So here's the thing, like, there's no evidence that there's been any type of conspiracy by Big Pharma to cover this shit up. Like, it's like, oh, by the way, we're going to investigate to see whether... This is how they operate. They begin with the end in mind, instead of beginning with the evidence and taking it to its conclusion.
Yeah, they're coming at it, I don't like trans people, transgender stuff is bad, we're going to investigate it until we prove it, instead of, I wonder what we should do about transgender people. Let's look at the studies.
It's classic presuppositionalism. They did the same thing with Biden. They're like, we're going to go ahead and investigate him until we find some dirt on him.
Yeah.
Like, rather than letting the evidence take you the way we did with, Orange Guy here.
And yeah, the whole idea of, like, Big Pharma, yes, Big Pharma definitely has its sins and definitely needs to be reined in and controlled. We've seen with the opioid epidemic, they clearly don't have our best interests in mind at all times. But at the same time, a lot of the treatments that go into trans health care aren't even medication drugs. So, like, this isn't like some cash cow either.
No, absolutely not.
It's making it seem like that money would be the ideal. And if that were the case, medications would be a whole hell of a lot more expensive.
So what's the conspiracy theory now? That we're transing the kids to get rich?
Yes.
What?
Well,
what?
You can't be doing it because you think it's for the best interest of the children. But then again, that's kind of the way you always, the other side gets painted, is everything they're doing is for these evil, illicit purposes because they're terrible. They can't be doing this because they genuinely feel they have a reason to disagree with us. It's nefarious and bad. We all saw what they did with those kids at Pizzagate and harvesting hormones from kids and stuff. We saw it.
We saw it.
In order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable.
Oh yeah, because kids are very
and again,
vulnerable.
The parents
Excellent ad lib there,
be
Mr. President.
intelligent enough or caring about their children enough to think about these things and even see, like, does it make sense that my kid could be trans? Because I bet if you talk to most parents of trans kids that are going through these things right now, they'll be pretty convinced their kid's trans.
Oh yeah.
We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers which are in no way licensed or approved for this use.
And again,
there's no illegal marketing taking place.
Yeah, it's not being marketed.
It's not being marketed.
You don't see things
by
on
Big Pharma.
TV. You don't see ads on TV about it. And furthermore, off-label uses, if we got rid of off-label uses, a lot of medicine would come to a screeching halt.
Right.
Because many conditions are treated with off-label uses of medication.
Pika, we turned on subscriber-only chat, so yes, the phobes indeed have shut up.
Yeah, it just got to be too crazy.
Yeah.
We were trying to engage with them, and we're sorry for those of you that aren't phobes that got shut out.
When's the last time you saw a commercial on TV that's like, hey, you're feeling trans? Try estradiol. Like, no, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and sure, these medications were already on the market for other uses, but again, that's what medicine does.
I would love to see that commercial, though. I just got a brainstorm in my head. So you've got Shania Twain's music in the background, right?
I feel like a woman.
Oh no! Live access removed? What the hell? Appeal. Misinformation?
Yeah.
Misinformation?
They said we were giving misinformation, I'm sure.
Oh my god. Well, anyway, we're still on YouTube though, so we can still continue, but holy crap.
Yeah, misinformation.
Misinformation. Oh my god.
My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination.
Civil rights violation for sex discrimination.
That's crazy.
That doesn't even begin to make sense.
No, it doesn't.
What they're trying to do is strictly define what man is and woman is, and then they're going to start doing things to people like, oh, well, you're a dude, we don't like that you're wearing makeup. Or you're a chick, we don't like that you're working on cars. You are trying to erase the beautiful differences between men and women. You are not okay.
The elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique.
We celebrate mothers and fathers and parents in school. And I've never seen a child, I've never seen someone walk up to a girl and backhand her for playing with a Barbie. Or a boy, and backhand him for playing with a truck. I think everyone's pretty well aware that there are some things that are gender-coded, and there are people that fit within that, and there are people that don't. And I fear that this is going to start going for anybody outside of the strict gender binary, even those that aren't trans at all.
Yeah, it's going to hurt us all. One thing that I've noticed from my transition is that men and women are more the same than we are different. We're more similar than we are different.
Yeah.
And, gender differences are gender role differences. And they vary from culture to culture, but they are emphasized in order to further subjugate women.
That's and
to keep men in power.
Because pretty much anything that's associated with femininity. Like a girl that likes trucks, oh, she's cool. She's cool. She's laid back. She's fun.
Well, she's a tomboy is what she is.
Oh, yeah, but she's cool and she's fun. She's relaxed. You can have a beer with her. She's great. A boy that loves makeup, he's a pussy.
He's an F-slur. Yeah.
Yeah, he's no, that's ill.
Yeah.
Why? Because femininity is looked upon badly.
I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear...
See, that right there is to me the worst part of this entire video. And that's the part I put up on TikTok earlier today. To say that your gender is assigned at birth and that's it, is trans erasure. It is literally erasing trans people from existence.
Yeah.
And to say that there's only two genders is completely erasing non-binary people from existence.
It is. And it's erasing what we know. He's also conflating sex and gender. Sex is between the legs. Gender is between the ears.
Right.
And psychology and sociology have known for a long time that these two are related but different things.
Right. So that right there is the most troubling part to me.
Yeah.
Clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports.
So men already don't participate in women's sports.
Yeah.
Title IX has to do with education in public schools.
Yeah.
Right? So what he's saying there is he's defining trans girls, because let's keep in mind these are children, these are school-age children, as men.
Yeah, I like how sometimes they're children, these poor defenseless little children, trying to make you think of infants and toddlers, but then when it suits them, men.
Exactly. So, yeah, again,
sorry, dogs.
poisoning the well.
And we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume
protecting
a
the rights
gender.
of parents, but we've already established that no children are getting this health care without their parents' buy-in. What about the rights of those parents?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just so twisty.
It don't matter because they're terrible parents.
What it basically boils down to is they want to protect their right to do what they want to do, while taking away our right to do what we want to do.
Exactly. It's like, that's absolutely obscene and insane. But at the same time, this isn't going to do anything to make people not trans.
People are still going to keep being trans.
It's just going to make it more difficult. Kind of like making abortion illegal didn't actually cut down on the number of abortions done. It just makes it less safe. Anything you drive to the underground becomes less safe. Look at how unsafe alcohol became during Prohibition.
Right.
Look at how unsafe abortion was before it was brought into the open and light and regulated medically and done by professionals in safe places. Look at how bad and dangerous transgender surgeries were when they were done by back alley physicians that may or may not have ever been credentialed doctors. Look at how many people suffered and died. Talk about mutilation.
Right.
All he's doing is forcing desperate people onto the internet to buy unregulated chemicals and God knows what combination to do what they've been able to get safely, legally, and medically already.
Which is new, and an identity without the parents' consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent.
He looks so confused when he's saying that.
The identity will not be
The identity will not be new. I have no idea what the hell he was doing there. That was some weird ad lib right there.
Weird,
like he was reading off the teleprompter, but then he went off. But yeah, it's just so wild. It's like, no, what he's saying right there, let me translate, is a little trans girl will not be allowed to transition socially without her parents' consent. And yet, he's already saying that he's going to end gender transition completely.
So parents can't consent.
Yeah, so I'm just... And he's characterized gender-affirming care as CA, as mutilation, as cruel. Yeah. So any parent that would consent to that, by extension,
it is cruel,
would also be
cruel
and abusive. So, just the mental gymnastics here.
And I like how often these people are like, so it's a new identity. Like
no, I've always been a girl.
Well, and even if it were new, okay, so what? Like, my hair wasn't always purple. You know? Like, my face, I didn't always have, like, bright green eyelids. My nails weren't green when they came out. You know? Like,
right.
There's so many other things that you can change and do differently. And there's so many new identities that we celebrate. Like, the identity is new parents, or going to college, or you're 21 now, you're a new adult. How do you demand for misinformation?
We got a malicious reporting. A bunch of them.
Yeah, probably a bunch of them.
No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of.
No one is telling our children they were born in the wrong gender. It's quite the opposite.
Or the
The
wrong
children, the children are telling the parents that they feel like their gender doesn't match up with the sex.
Yeah, and then the parents are listening and watching and probably not immediately carting the kid off to the doctor either. Yes, but we're doing this. We'll talk about it in just a minute. We're almost done.
In all of human history, nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today.
Well, there have been trans people for as long as there have been gender, and just because you've never heard of it, sir, doesn't mean that nobody's ever heard of it.
Yeah, and even if it were a completely new thing, like, okay, what of? Like, nobody had ever heard of cars at one point. That doesn't mean that they're bad or ruining society. It just means things change. But, yeah, she's absolutely right. There have been trans people as long as we've had people.
As long as we've had the concept of gender, there have been transgender people.
Yeah. And just do a little digging. Most societies have some kind of role for people in that space.
Mm-hmm. They're called two-spirit in some cultures. Some cultures recognize as many as 7 genders.
Yeah. And, yeah, the exact number of genders, I don't know. I think probably, much like gender is a culture and time-bound principle, largely that's going to vary around the world and around time. But there's definitely more than 2.
Definitely more than 2.
It was all when the radical left invented it just a
The
few years
radical
ago.
left invented
Under my
it
leadership,
just a
this
few
madness
years
will
ago.
end. Thank you very much.
No, they just
Oh.
started, the right started
Crazy.
caring about it just a few years ago. But trans people have been using your bathrooms without harm for decades. And you didn't even know it.
Yeah, so that's the plan, and it's all horrible. I hate it all.
Yeah, I just don't see what good is going to come of this. I really don't.
There isn't any good that's going to come of this, but we're going to fight it. The ACLU is going to fight it.
Yeah, and I hope medical organizations stand up and fight it too. Though, unfortunately, I'm not terribly hopeful. Like, I suspect they will, kind of like medical organizations have been fighting back against the abortion bans. I just don't know how far that will go when faced with demagogues with an opinion. Because they haven't actually done any research on it, but they think they're entitled to have an opinion and know what's correct. And, yeah, they don't have to listen to anybody else because we're in a post-fact world, apparently.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Alright, guys. Well, thanks for watching. We appreciate you for coming in. And, we're not going to be on TikTok for a while.
Yeah, hopefully that gets fixed quickly, but who knows?
Yeah, but stay safe out there. And as always, be true to yourself.